The room was full, yet it felt suffocatingly quiet. Every eye was fixed on Sophia as she stood in the center, her hands steady, her voice calm in a way that sent chills through the air. Moments earlier, laughter had filled the space, plates had clinked, and smiles had rested comfortably on familiar faces. Now, shock sat heavily on every chest as she exposed the unthinkable. The husband she loved and the best friend she trusted had been betraying her in secret, plotting to humiliate her, steal from her, and destroy her reputation. Words like knives fell from her lips, sharp and unforgiving, stripping Christopher and Rachel of every mask they had carefully worn. Tears, denial, accusations, and chaos erupted all at once, but Sophia did not flinch. She had already won. As divorce papers hit the table and the truth stood bare for all to see, one thing became painfully clear. This moment had been long in the making, and nothing would ever be the same again. But how did it all come to this? How did a woman admired by all, living what seemed like a perfect life in the lively city of Elmsfield, find herself standing at the center of such betrayal, and how did she manage to turn the tables so completely? Sit back, relax, and allow yourself to be drawn in as we delve into this interesting and remarkable story. Sophia's story in Elmsfield began long before admiration found her name, long before polished rooms and quiet applause followed her steps. In the early days, she was simply a woman with patient hands and a mind that saw beauty where others saw clutter. Elmsfield was alive then, in a way that felt almost musical, morning joggers nodding at each other, shopkeepers calling out greetings, laughter rising from cafes like steam from warm cups. Sophia moved through the city with an ease that came from knowing who she was. Her childhood memories were rooted in modesty and discipline, lessons passed down gently by parents who believed that character was a house built brick by brick. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without right, her mother often reminded her, quoting Proverbs 16 verse 8, and those words stayed stitched into Sophia's conscience. When she met Christopher in those early years, he seemed to mirror that steadiness. He spoke carefully, planned meticulously, and carried himself like a man who believed tomorrow was something you earned. Their courtship unfolded slowly, like a well-written letter, full of pauses and anticipation. Walks through Elmsfield's tree-lined streets turned into long conversations about dreams, faith, and the kind of home they hoped to build, one grounded not just in concrete and paint, but in loyalty. To Sophia, love felt like a safe harbor, and Christopher appeared to be the anchor. The city watched them with quiet approval, as though Elmsfield itself had nodded and said, "This union fits." Marriage did not change Sophia's rhythm. It deepened it. The early days of their life together were filled with small victories that felt enormous: first shared breakfasts, late-night planning sessions, laughter echoing through half-furnished rooms. Sophia poured her heart into interior decorating, often returning home with fabric samples tucked under her arm, her mind buzzing with ideas. Christopher would listen, or at least appear to, nodding while reviewing blueprints of bridges and buildings that symbolized stability. Friends admired them, saying they balanced each other well, like day and night sharing the same sky. Sophia believed it too. She believed marriage was a garden that flourished when both partners watered it, and she gave generously of herself. When challenges arose, she leaned on faith, whispering verses under her breath during quiet moments. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor, from Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9. Elmsfield's social gatherings became extensions of her hospitality. She hosted dinners where laughter flowed freely and made sure everyone felt seen. There was no pretense in her kindness. It came naturally, like breathing. She did not know then that sometimes the brightest lamps cast the longest shadows, or that trust, once given freely, can be the easiest thing to misuse. Rachel entered Sophia's life during this season, not as a threat, but as a blessing, or so it seemed. Their friendship grew from shared afternoons and long conversations that drifted from harmless gossip to heartfelt confessions. Rachel listened intently, nodding, offering comfort when Sophia spoke about work pressures or the adjustments of marriage. Sophia welcomed her like family, believing that friendship, like bread, was meant to be broken and shared. She never counted the cost of her openness. In Elmsfield, where appearances often mattered more than truth, Sophia stood out for her sincerity. Rachel's presence in her home felt harmless, even comforting. They laughed together, teased each other, and spoke of futures that seemed wide open. Sophia would sometimes think of the verse, "A friend loveth at all times," from Proverbs 17 verse 17, and smile, convinced she had been blessed with such loyalty. The irony lay quietly beneath the surface, unseen and unheard. Rachel observed everything, Sophia's habits, her schedule, her unwavering trust. Meanwhile, Christopher watched too, his silences growing heavier, his smiles less sincere. Yet Sophia, believing the best, dismissed any fleeting doubt as fatigue or overthinking. After all, hadn't she been taught that love believeth all things, hopeth all things, as written in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 7? She held on to that belief like a compass, unaware it was slowly guiding her into a storm. As the years passed, admiration for Sophia in Elmsfield grew louder. Her work transformed spaces, but more than that, it reflected who she was, balanced, thoughtful, full of quiet grace. People spoke her name with respect, sometimes with envy, but always with acknowledgement. Christopher benefited from that glow, standing beside a woman who seemed to elevate everything she touched. To the outside world, they were a picture framed perfectly, no cracks visible. Sophia took pride not in the praise itself, but in the sense that her life aligned with her values. She believed that diligence would always be rewarded, that honesty would never betray her. "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established," she often recalled from Proverbs 16, verse 3, using it as a mantra during long nights of planning. Yet even as she built a life that appeared solid, unseen shifts were taking place beneath her feet. The ground was changing quietly, like sand rearranging itself before a tide. Sophia, still rooted in faith and goodwill, had no reason to look for fault lines. She moved forward with confidence. Unaware that some storms do not announce themselves with thunder, they arrive softly, disguised as familiar smiles, waiting for the moment when trust has been fully given and defenses are gently, almost lovingly, laid down. Rachel's transformation did not happen overnight. It crept in like a slow change of seasons that Sophia noticed but never questioned. In Elmsfield, people often upgraded their lives, and Sophia assumed this was one of those ordinary turns of fortune. Still, the details were hard to miss. Rachel's fingers glittered with rings that caught the light too well to be costume jewelry, her ears adorned with pieces that whispered wealth without saying a word. Her phone changed models almost as frequently as the weather, each one sleeker than the last. When Sophia teased her playfully, asking if she had stumbled upon buried treasure or won a quiet lottery, Rachel would laugh and brush it off, saying there was a secret admirer somewhere in the world who liked to spoil her. The two women would laugh together, the sound light and careless, and Sophia would think nothing more of it. After all, curiosity killed the cat, and she had learned early not to pry where she was not invited. Yet, beneath the laughter, there were moments when Rachel's eyes flickered with something unreadable, like a candle trembling in a draught. Sophia missed those moments, too busy trusting. She believed friendship was built on faith, not suspicion. The words of Jeremiah 17, verse 7 often echoed in her heart. "Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord, and whose hope the Lord is." She extended that trust freely to those around her, never imagining it could be twisted into a weakness. To her, Rachel's prosperity was simply a blessing she was glad her friend could enjoy, proof that good things still happen to good people. Christopher, on the other hand, had begun to change in quieter, more calculated ways. He spoke more often about finances, about security, about how couples should function as a single unit. Years earlier, when he suggested a joint account, he framed it as a symbol of unity, a practical step toward a stronger marriage. Sophia agreed without resistance, believing that marriage meant sharing burdens as well as blessings. At the time, it felt like common sense, the kind of decision married people made every day. Over time, however, Christopher's interest in money grew sharper, his questions more pointed. He would ask about her projects, her earnings, her future plans, always with a calm tone that masked his intent. Sophia answered openly, unaware that each detail was being filed away. She believed transparency was a virtue, echoing the verse from Luke 16, verse 10. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. She thought honesty would protect her, not realizing it was slowly being turned against her. Like a frog in gradually heated water, she never sensed the danger until it was too late. Christopher's control was subtle, wrapped in logic and reassurance, and Sophia mistook it for responsibility. The city of Elmsfield continued to smile at them, unaware that beneath the polished surface, one partner was counting while the other was giving. Rachel's visits became more frequent, her presence in Sophia's home almost habitual. She knew where everything was kept, which mug Sophia preferred in the morning, which chair Christopher liked to sit in after a long day. To Sophia, this familiarity felt comforting, like a sisterly bond that required no explanations. They spoke for hours, sometimes late into the night, about dreams deferred and disappointments unspoken. Sophia shared her fears about balancing work and marriage, about the pressure to remain perfect in a city that thrived on appearances. Rachel listened attentively, offering sympathy, nodding at the right moments, her voice soft with understanding. Sophia never noticed how carefully Rachel absorbed every word, how she mirrored her emotions just enough to earn deeper trust. As iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend, says Proverbs 27, verse 17, and Sophia believed their friendship worked that way, mutually refining, mutually supportive. She did not know that iron, when struck with the wrong intent, can also wound. Rachel's laughter rang a little too freely, her comfort a little too practiced, but Sophia dismissed any flicker of doubt as uncharitable thinking. In her mind, friendship was not something to guard with suspicion. It was something to nurture, even if it meant leaving the door wide open. As time moved on, small inconsistencies began to dot the landscape of Sophia's life like faint cracks in a wall. Rachel's stories about her admirer shifted slightly each time, details changing just enough to be noticed but not enough to confront. Christopher became more absent, physically present but emotionally elsewhere, his mind often preoccupied. Still, Sophia chose peace over paranoia. She told herself that everyone carried burdens unseen, that it was not her place to interrogate those she loved. Judge not, that ye be not judged, from Matthew 7, verse 1, guided her reactions whenever questions stirred in her mind. She focused instead on her work, on creating beauty, on maintaining harmony in her home. The idiom, "what you don't know won't hurt you," seemed almost comforting then, though it was quietly untrue. Elmsfield continued to bustle around her, bright and lively, while beneath her carefully arranged life, secrets were being dressed in gold and paraded without shame. Sophia stood in the middle of it all, trusting, giving, believing, unaware that the very virtues she cherished were being used as stepping stones toward her undoing. The day Sophia decided to visit Rachel without calling ahead began like any other, unremarkable and unassuming, the kind of day that lulls the heart into ease. Elmsfield was busy with its usual rhythm, horns humming in the distance, vendors calling out, life moving at its predictable pace. Sophia carried a small gift in her hand, a thoughtful token she had picked up on impulse, because that was who she was, someone who believed kindness should not wait for an occasion. As she turned onto Rachel's street, Her thoughts wandered lazily, replaying fragments of past conversations, laughter shared, secrets entrusted. Then she saw it. Christopher's car stood parked neatly by the curb, unmistakable in shape and color, like a sentence written too clearly to be misunderstood. For a moment, her mind scrambled for explanations, grasping at straws. Perhaps he had stopped by briefly. Perhaps there was some harmless reason she simply hadn't been told. Her heart thudded against her chest, not violently, but insistently, as though warning her to pay attention. She slowed her steps, each one heavier than the last, feeling as though she were walking into a room where the air had suddenly thinned. The idiom "hope against hope" took on a bitter taste as she reached the door, still clinging to the belief that there must be a reasonable explanation. She reminded herself of the verse from Proverbs 4 verse 23, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life," though she did not yet understand how vulnerable her heart truly was. Instead of knocking, she hesitated, listening. Laughter floated through the walls, warm and familiar, and something inside her shifted, like a foundation cracking under silent pressure. Sophia did not intend to spy. Circumstance pushed her there, quiet and unavoidable. She moved closer, careful as a cat on hot bricks, her breath shallow, her senses sharpening against her will. Through the small opening, she saw them. Christopher relaxed in a way she had not seen in months, Rachel leaning toward him, their proximity speaking louder than words ever could. There was ease between them, an intimacy that did not need explanation, the kind that comes from repetition, not novelty. They laughed softly, their voices weaving together like threads of the same cloth. Sophia's hands trembled, the gift slipping from her fingers as realization dawned, slow and merciless. This was not a coincidence, it was a pattern. Her mind raced backward, replaying every ignored sign, every dismissed doubt, every moment she had chosen trust over caution. The idiom, "the blind leading the blind," echoed bitterly in her thoughts, though she alone had been blind. She wanted to step away, to pretend she had seen nothing, but her feet refused to move. Then the conversation shifted, cutting deeper than the sight itself. They spoke her name casually, carelessly, as though she were not a person but a concept, something to be managed. Rachel's tone was mocking, Christopher's calculating. They spoke of timing, of appearances, of how perfectly everything would unfold. Sophia felt a cold wave wash over her as she remembered Psalm 55 verses 12 and 13. "For it was not an enemy that reproached me. Then I could have borne it. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide, and mine acquaintance." The words wrapped around her pain with uncanny precision, naming a betrayal she had not yet fully faced. As she listened, the truth grew heavier, each sentence stacking upon the last like stones on her chest. They spoke openly of a public divorce, of family gatherings turned into stages for humiliation, of painting her as unstable, unreliable, unworthy of sympathy. The cruelty was not shouted, it was spoken calmly, as though they were discussing logistics for a trip. That calmness hurt more than anger ever could. Sophia's tears fell silently, blurring her vision, yet she did not wipe them away. She stood there absorbing every word, her heart breaking in places she did not know existed. When money entered the conversation, her knees nearly buckled. They spoke of draining accounts, of taking what she had worked for, of leaving her with nothing but confusion and shame. Years of diligence, of late nights and careful planning, reduced to numbers in someone else's scheme. "The thief cometh not, but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy," from John 10 verse 10 echoed in her mind, and for the first time she understood that theft was not always loud or sudden. Sometimes it wore familiar faces and spoke in gentle tones. The idiom, adding insult to injury, felt painfully literal as they laughed, their amusement sharp and careless. Sophia felt foolish, exposed, as though her soul had been stripped bare without her consent. Yet beneath the pain, something else stirred, clarity. Truth once seen could not be unseen. When she finally stepped away, It was as though she were moving through water, each motion slow and heavy. She did not confront them. She did not make a sound. She left the gift behind, forgotten, meaningless now. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had happened. Cars passed, birds chirped, Elmsfield breathed on, indifferent to her private collapse. She walked home with tears streaming freely, no longer trying to hold them back, her grief spilling over like a cup filled too long. By the time she reached her door, exhaustion weighed on her bones, but sleep was far from her reach. She sat alone, replaying the conversation again and again, each repetition carving the truth deeper into her heart. Yet somewhere in that long night, between sobs and silence, resolve began to form. Pain sharpened her thoughts instead of dulling them. She remembered Romans 12, verse 19. "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." And though she did not yet know what action she would take, she knew one thing with certainty: she would not remain powerless. The idiom "still waters run deep" described her perfectly in that moment. Beneath her quiet exterior, something steady and unyielding had awakened. She did not sleep much that night, but when morning came, it found a woman changed, carrying sorrow in her chest and determination in her spine, ready, though not yet, to face what must be done. Sophia woke the morning after her discovery with swollen eyes and a strange calm she did not recognize. The storm that had raged inside her through the night had not disappeared, but it had settled into something quieter, heavier, like ashes after a fire. She moved through the house carefully, noticing details she had once loved, the curve of a chair she designed, the soft light through the curtains, now tinged with sorrow. Christopher greeted her as usual, his voice steady, his face unreadable, and Sophia realized with a dull ache how skilled deception could be when practiced daily. She responded politely, even kindly, her words measured, her tone unchanged. It felt like acting on a stage she had not auditioned for, yet she played her role with surprising precision. The idiom "grin and bear it" echoed in her thoughts, not as encouragement, but as a temporary shield. Inside, questions clamored for answers, but she silenced them, choosing observation over reaction. She remembered the verse from Psalm 37, verse 7. "Rest in the Lord, and wait patiently for him." And though patience had never felt so painful, she clung to it. Throughout the day, she watched Christopher closely, the way he checked his phone, the pauses before he spoke, the subtle confidence that suggested he believed his plans were foolproof. Rachel called later, her voice sweet, her concern feigned, and Sophia responded warmly, even laughing at the right moments. Hanging up, Sophia felt the sting of betrayal anew, yet she did not falter. She understood now that silence could be a strategy, that sometimes the strongest move was to let others believe they were winning while you quietly changed the rules of the game. In the days that followed, Sophia became deliberate with her time and thoughts. She allowed herself moments of grief in private, early mornings before the city woke, late nights when the house fell silent, but she did not let sorrow paralyze her. Instead, she turned it into fuel. She scheduled a meeting with a lawyer under the guise of a professional consultation, her voice steady as she explained her situation without embellishment. Each word spoken aloud made the truth more solid, less haunting. The lawyer listened carefully, outlining options, rights, and steps, and for the first time since her world cracked open, Sophia felt a sense of control returning. "The prudent man foreseeth the evil, and hideth himself," from Proverbs 22, verse 3, resonated deeply with her as she signed documents and asked questions. There was no rush, no dramatic declarations, just careful planning. Next came the bank. Sophia approached the process methodically, ensuring every detail was handled discreetly. Transferring funds felt surreal, like reclaiming pieces of herself she had unknowingly handed over. She did not celebrate, she simply breathed easier. The idiom, "locking the stable after the horse has bolted," crossed her mind, but she corrected herself. This was not too late. It was precisely on time. Christopher noticed nothing, and that, more than anything, confirmed the wisdom of her restraint. Each quiet victory strengthened her resolve, reminding her that preparation, not confrontation, would be her shield. At home, Sophia maintained the rhythm of normalcy with careful attention. She cooked, she smiled, she listened, all while keeping her heart guarded behind invisible walls. Rachel continued to visit, her presence now an exercise in endurance. Sophia watched her friend move through the house with practiced ease, touching objects that no longer felt safe, speaking words that rang hollow. Yet Sophia responded with grace, offering tea, engaging in conversation, even sharing small, inconsequential stories to maintain the illusion of trust. It was not deception for pleasure's sake. It was survival. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, from Matthew 10 verse 16 surfaced in her mind often, guiding her interactions. She noted how Rachel's questions subtly probed for information about finances, about schedules, about upcoming plans, and Sophia learned to answer without revealing anything of value. It felt like walking a tightrope, but she balanced carefully, refusing to let emotion tip her off course. In these moments, Sophia understood the idiom, "still waters run deep," more clearly than ever. Beneath her calm exterior, calculations were forming, contingencies aligning. She no longer shared her fears. She shared only what was necessary. Trust, once broken, did not regenerate easily, and Sophia accepted that reality without bitterness. This chapter of her life was not about restoring what was lost. It was about protecting what remained. Selling the house was the final piece, and it required the greatest patience. Sophia contacted a realtor quietly, outlining her conditions clearly. There would be no signs, no visits, no whispers until she gave the word. The house, once a symbol of shared dreams, now felt like a shell she was ready to leave behind. Signing the preliminary papers stirred unexpected emotions, not regret, but a sense of release, as though she were loosening knots tied too tightly for too long. She remembered Isaiah 43 verses 18 and 19. "Remember ye not the former things? Behold, I will do a new thing." And though the future was uncertain, it no longer terrified her. Each night, she reviewed her plans mentally, adjusting details, ensuring nothing was left to chance. She knew the exposure would come, but not yet. Timing was everything, and she refused to strike before the moment was ripe. Christopher and Rachel continued their charade, confident, careless, believing Sophia oblivious. The idiom "pride goeth before a fall" lingered in her thoughts, a quiet reminder of what awaited them. For now, Sophia waited, not in weakness, but in strength, understanding that the most powerful moves are often made in silence, long before the world realizes a game has even begun. The announcement of the family gathering arrived like a drumbeat Sophia had been expecting, but still felt in her bones when it finally sounded. Christopher mentioned it casually over dinner, speaking of relatives traveling in, of laughter and shared meals stretching across 2 days. His tone carried a confidence that bordered on smugness, as though he believed he was orchestrating events rather than merely participating in them. Sophia listened quietly, nodding at the right moments, her face calm, her heart steady in a way that surprised even her. Inside, she marked the date carefully, recognizing it as the turning point she had been waiting for. This was not coincidence, it was opportunity. She thought of Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1. "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven," and felt a strange reassurance settle over her. The idiom "strike while the iron is hot" crossed her mind, but she dismissed haste. She did not need heat, she needed precision. As preparations began, Sophia involved herself fully, helping plan meals, suggesting seating arrangements, ensuring everyone would feel welcomed. Christopher watched her with what he likely interpreted as satisfaction, unaware that her cooperation was not surrender but strategy. Each task completed was another step toward an ending only she could see clearly. In the background, Elmsfield buzzed as usual, unaware that one of its most admired households was quietly preparing for a reckoning. Inviting Rachel was a decision Sophia made deliberately, her resolve firm despite the faint tremor it caused in her chest. She extended the invitation with warmth, her voice light, her words generous. Rachel accepted eagerly, her enthusiasm thinly veiled behind politeness. Sophia could almost sense her anticipation through the phone, the unspoken belief that she would soon step fully into a life she had been borrowing in fragments. The idiom, "give them enough rope, and they'll hang themselves," lingered uncomfortably in Sophia's thoughts, not with malice, but with inevitability. In the days leading up to the gathering, Rachel visited often, offering help, moving through the house with an ease that once would have felt familiar. Sophia observed everything, the glances exchanged, the subtle touches, the shared smiles meant to go unnoticed. She responded with courtesy, never revealing the knowledge she carried. "Surely thou didst set them in slippery places." From Psalm 73, verse 18 came to her mind, not as a wish, but as an observation of truth unfolding. Christopher and Rachel believed the next day would belong to them, that their own performance would take center stage after the gathering ended. That belief made them careless, relaxed, and confident. Sophia, on the other hand, was fully awake, every sense sharpened. She understood now that betrayal often thrives on underestimation. They thought her gentle. They did not know how firm gentleness could be. When the first day of the gathering arrived, the house filled with voices and movement, the air thick with perfume, laughter, and the clatter of dishes. Family members embraced, reminisced, and settled into familiar rhythms, unaware of the tension humming just beneath the surface. Sophia moved gracefully among them, greeting each guest with sincerity, her smile warm, her hospitality impeccable. If anyone noticed the weight she carried, they did not mention it. Christopher played his role well, attentive and charming, basking in the approval of relatives who admired his marriage and his success. Rachel blended in seamlessly, dressed elegantly, her confidence unshaken. Sophia watched them both with a calm that bordered on eerie, noting how comfortable they seemed in deception. The idiom, "the calm before the storm," felt almost literal as conversations flowed easily, plates were cleared, and people settled into relaxed chatter. Sophia felt time stretching, each minute deliberate, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. She remembered Proverbs 21, verse 30. "There is no wisdom, nor understanding, nor counsel against the Lord," and the words steadied her nerves. This was not about revenge fueled by anger. It was about truth stepping into the light. She waited, allowing the atmosphere to soften, knowing that revelations land hardest when defenses are down. Her heart beat steadily, not wildly. She was no longer afraid of what would happen. She was ready. When Sophia finally stood, the room did not immediately quiet, but her presence commanded attention in a way she had never fully recognized before. Conversations tapered off, eyes turned toward her, smiles expectant. She began softly, thanking everyone for coming, for welcoming her into the family, for the years of shared moments and kindness. Her words were sincere, not a performance, and that sincerity disarmed the room. Christopher looked surprised, then pleased, assuming this was another display of her gracious nature. Rachel's smile widened, her posture relaxed. Sophia continued, her voice steady, each sentence carefully placed. As she spoke, memories flickered through her mind, the nights of silent planning, the restraint, the patience. She thought of Luke 8, verse 17, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest," and felt the truth rising to the surface like a tide that could no longer be held back. She paused, allowing the silence to settle, feeling every eye on her. The idiom, "the truth will out," echoed within her, not as a threat, but as a promise fulfilled. In that moment, Sophia was not the woman they had underestimated. She was clarity itself, standing in the center of a room that was about to learn how fragile lies become when confronted by quiet, unwavering truth. Sophia let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, the kind that makes people shift in their seats and clear their throats. Then she spoke again, and this time her words cut through the room like a blade drawn slowly from its sheath. Her voice did not tremble. It carried a calm that made the truth sharper. She began by naming what everyone least expected to hear, speaking plainly, without euphemism or mercy. She told them that the marriage they admired had been rotting from the inside, that the man seated among them had been sleeping with the woman he introduced as his wife's best friend. A collective gasp rippled through the room, but Sophia did not stop. She turned her gaze to Christopher, her eyes cold, and called him what he was, a coward wrapped in borrowed respect, a man who hid behind family gatherings and false smiles while plotting like a thief in the night. She told him he had the spine of wet paper and the loyalty of loose sand, that he lacked the courage to leave honestly and instead chose deceit. Then she turned to Rachel, her disappointment hardening into scorn. She called her a parasite dressed in silk, a woman who fed on another's kindness and called it opportunity. She mocked her false tears before they even fell, saying she had perfected the art of playing the victim while sharpening the knife behind her back. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful, she quoted from Proverbs 27 verse 6, letting the words hang heavily. Sophia reminded them both that secrets rot the soul, and theirs had begun to stink long ago. Every sentence landed like a blow, not loud, not frantic, but deliberate and devastating. Rachel broke first. Her composure shattered, and she slid from her chair to the floor as though her legs could no longer carry the weight of exposure. She cried loudly, clutching at Sophia's dress, begging for forgiveness, her voice cracking as she claimed she had been misled, that Christopher had pursued her, promised her a future, convinced her love justified betrayal. Sophia looked down at her with a mixture of disgust and pity, her lips curling into a bitter smile. She told Rachel to remove her hands, calling her desperation an insult to genuine remorse. She accused her of enjoying every stolen gift, every whispered lie, every moment spent in another woman's home pretending to be family. The wicked flee when no man pursueth, she recalled from Proverbs 28 verse 1, pointing out that Rachel's tears were not born of repentance, but of fear. Christopher reacted with fury, shouting at Rachel, calling her reckless, blaming her for ruining everything. His anger spilled freely now, his mask completely off, revealing a man incapable of accountability. He turned to Sophia next, his voice cracking as he begged, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that he had been manipulated. Sophia laughed then, a sharp, humorless sound that startled everyone. She told him he was not clever enough to be manipulated, only weak enough to volunteer. She said he had the audacity to plan her humiliation while standing on her labor, her money, her patience. For the integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them, she quoted from Proverbs 11 verse 3, making it clear their unraveling was self-inflicted. The room descended into chaos as family members murmured, argued, and demanded explanations. Sophia raised her hand, commanding silence without raising her voice. From her bag, she removed the divorce papers and tossed them onto the table between Christopher and Rachel, as though discarding something worthless. She announced that the marriage was already over in every way that mattered, that the law would soon reflect what truth had already declared. Then she revealed what hurt Christopher most. The money was gone. Every cent he thought he would steal had been secured beyond his reach. She described his plans back to him in detail, mocking his confidence, exposing how she had dismantled his scheme piece by piece, while he congratulated himself too early. She told him he would learn the hard way that counting another person's wealth before it is yours is like building castles in the air. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also, she referenced from Matthew 6 verses 19 and 21. making it clear his heart had been fixed on greed. She added the final blow with calm precision. She had sold the house. The very walls he thought would shelter his new life no longer belonged to him. He would need to find somewhere else to lay his head. The idiom "hoist with his own petard" fit him perfectly now, and Sophia let him sit in that realization without mercy. As she prepared to leave, Sophia delivered her final words, not shouted, but spoken with a clarity that silenced even the whispers. She told Rachel that no amount of borrowed luxury could hide a bankrupt character, that beauty without integrity was nothing but a painted grave. She told Christopher that respect once lost is rarely recovered, and his had evaporated the moment he chose deception over decency. "Be sure your sin will find you out," she quoted from Numbers 32:23, letting the scripture seal their fate. She reminded the room that she owed no one further explanation, that her dignity was not up for debate. Then she walked away, her steps steady, her head high, leaving behind two people exposed in the harsh light of their own making. Christopher sat frozen, his future collapsing around him, while Rachel sobbed, isolated, no longer welcome anywhere she once felt comfortable. Sophia stepped into the open air of Elmsfield, feeling the weight lift from her chest. The city lights glowed ahead, indifferent yet promising. She did not look back. The chapter of her life defined by betrayal had ended, not with violence or spectacle, but with truth spoken fully and fearlessly. And in that truth, she reclaimed herself completely. Dear listeners, never confuse silence with ignorance, and never mistake kindness for weakness. This story is a warning wrapped in pain. Trust is precious, but blind trust is dangerous. Guard your heart without hardening it, and remember that love does not require you to surrender your discernment. Pay attention to patterns, not excuses, to actions, not words. Anyone who truly loves you will not plot your downfall in secret or benefit from your vulnerability. The Bible reminds us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4, verse 23. Let that guard be wisdom, not fear. When betrayal comes, do not rush to react, think, prepare, and stand firm in truth. Dignity is louder than shouting, and patience can be more powerful than rage. In the end, truth always surfaces, and those who dig pits for others often fall into them themselves. Stay wise, stay observant, and never allow anyone to dim your self-worth for their convenience.